Hi, welcome to Coding Bootcamp's YouTube channel. Subscribe now and join our live stream session later. See you.
Teresa Dalb, and I'll be your UX tutor today. I'm so excited to work with you and get you started in the field of UX. Welcome to our first UX session. All you're going to need today is your laptop, and feel free to grab a pen and paper to take some notes. Today we're going to be discussing how to discover, plan, explore, create, finalize, and analyze. I know this seems like a lot, but don't worry, I'm going to walk you through it all. First, we're going to start with discover. And what we're going to learn about here is current situation analysis, competition analysis, how to find and talk to users individually, and how to use quantitative techniques to gather data about users and their needs. So we're going to go over this basic vocabulary, and I'd get ready to type or write down this information because it's pretty important. First, we're going to start off with current situation analysis. So here it's defined as if the product is the continuation of the previous one, we're going to gather and interpret existing data from tools like analytics software. Then we're going to use usability testing to gather more information about what can be improved on in an existing product. So in summary, this is when you look at both internal and external factors that could affect your work. So you can use a usability test to see what can be improved upon and use that knowledge to better your end product. Now we have a competition analysis. This is where we're going to look at similar products which already exist on the market and are successful. And you're going to take notes of what works for that. There's numerous ways to do a competitive analysis. I'm going to show you a few examples in the next few slides. And it's not just UX designers and researchers that utilize these. It can be used by anybody that is building out a product or service. A competitive analysis allows you to see what potential competition is doing, and it will help you figure out how you can differentiate yourself and stand out. So here's the first example. You can see here they did just a very basic grid layout. They compared their product to 3 competitors. As you can see, it really depends, what your product is. Like for here, they did assortment, home delivery, store pickup. So it kind of sounds like this could be something that's like an e-commerce site that they might have been comparing it to. But, for instance, if you're doing, I'd say comparing iPhones, then you could compare Androids to Google phones. And for there, you could pick up their user experience, their quickness, their data, how much memory each phone uses. So it really depends on the product that you're comparing and contrasting. Another example here is this one's just very basic. You can compare it on pricing and the quality. So this is really good to use when your product may be geared towards being on the lower spectrum of price. And this way you can utilize and tell how high of a quality you can keep it at that low price that you may have originally wanted. Now here's another example that's very visually pleasing and pretty easy to read. It compares 4 different products, and you can see the ratings from best to worst based on if they're easy to use, tutorials, updates, things like that. So as you can see, there's numerous ways to do competitive analysis. There truly is no correct or incorrect way. It's just what is best utilized for you and how easily your team is to read it. Now, one thing we can do is we can find and talk to users individually. How do we do this? We're going to recruit people. This can be friends, family, strangers at coffee shops, social media. Don't be afraid to go up to strangers anywhere you see. See if they're willing to talk with you. You could offer them a free cup of coffee. You could offer them a $5 incentive, a small gift card. Whatever you can do to find those people that could help you on your project. And when we find these users, this is when we're going to conduct usability tests or user interviews such as surveys or oral questions. Our goal is to find 5 to 10 relevant users to interview. First, we're going to gather their feedback by carefully preparing a script and asking open-ended questions. And one good thing to do is make sure that the users you're interviewing are good representatives of the product you're working on. You want to make sure that they have the correct background before you interview them. This can be done through a survey or just through talking to them beforehand. Now, there's a lot of quantitative techniques, as you can see. This is how we gather data about users and their needs. So there's web analytics, A/B testing, card sorting, tree testing, surveys, questionnaires, clustering, qualitative comments. It just keeps going. It's a lot. It's definitely a lot to learn, but I promise you with practice, you're going to get there. So each one is definitely best utilized for specific situations. So tree testing may be the best for one type of study that needs to be like an e-commerce site or maybe a museum website and for great informational architecture. But for something that needs a lot of background research, surveys and questionnaires could be really great. So that way you could see what people know and gain more research information, just on very basics. It really depends on what you want to do. And we're going to talk about this more throughout the upcoming lessons. So this is when we have our plan. We're going to create personas, create user scenarios, create user flows, and identify red routes. So here's how we create a persona. After learning about our target user, we're going to create a persona by using the phrase, user is a blank who wants to blank. So this could be user is a, let's say, dentist who wants to get more clients. We're going to find a matching picture to identify and empathize with each persona. Personas give an answer about who the product is for. So here's a pretty good example of a guy named Adam. So he's a user experience designer, but he really wants to do something more fun on the weekends with his friends. He's having trouble because his friends tend to cancel plans or lose interest, and he really wants to make sure that they can find something that they all agree upon. So his favorite platforms are text message, Facebook, and email right now, but he wants to use something so he doesn't have to switch between these 3 applications. This is a basic summary of how a persona can work. You're going to put the user's goals, needs, their pain points, scenarios, and behaviors, photo, demographics, and a quote. So as you can see, Adam's pain points was his friends had to cancel plans. People were losing interest. He didn't like that. That was super frustrating. He needed to have enough time for planning events and be able to plan around his friends' schedules. His goals, he wanted to make sure that he could hang out with his friends. Being a user experience designer can be stressful at times. He wanted somewhere to go on the weekends and kind of just let loose. So as you can see, we had his photo on the left-hand side with his name. And, here's a short bio about him. So not every single persona has to be laid out exactly like this. This is just a helpful guideline to make sure you have the most important points in here. Now this is where we can create a user scenario. So after we identified our user, such as Adam, who's a UX designer, we're going to write down a sequence of events to match them with their objectives and goals. We're going to use user scenarios to answer a question about what the product is about. For example, if we were to go back to Adam, so what he wanted to do is he wanted to make plans more easily with his friends. This is where we would show a walkthrough of him going through the application on the direct platform itself. So we'd see him, kind of like as a prototype, like he clicked the back button here, or he clicked the front arrow here, and this is where it took him next on the screen. So here's an example of this. As you can see, you watch somebody press the home button, then they end up at this screen. And maybe they pressed this button right here. It's going to end up at the next screen. So as you can see, there's a ton of possibilities about where you could go. But this is a better example because it's going to allow you to visualize what buttons Adam could have pressed and where it would have taken him next. Now, one really important factor is to identify red routes. Red routes are the key activities that people expect to be able to complete within the system. These are the reasons why people purchased it. Defining them helps us avoid obstacles on key user journeys. If the red routes aren't obstacle-free, it's going to be really hard to convince users to continue using the system. An example of this is forgetting to put a back button on something or having access to the home menu on all screens. Now we're in the explore phase. This is where we're going to learn about information architecture, sketching, and wireframing. So information architecture, as you can see, this is where we're going to basically lay everything out. So for instance, if you were to click the Discover, there'd be a big drop-down menu. And this is where you have to figure out what's going to go under Discover, which thing is going to go first, which is going to go last. Now over here, you can see that they decided to put another menu here on this side that's going to give you in more detail while already being in, it looks like the LED TV section. So it's going to give you more information about the LED TV itself, such as reviews, you can compare prices, accessories, versus if you went to the home page, it's probably just going to be very basic information and more of an overview of everything that Samsung offers. Now we have sketching. So sketching can look very different. Some people will draw a little bit of their wireframes. Other people will just have boxes that really aren't, might not have the best design layout or anything yet. This is just the starting process. Your sketch is never supposed to be perfect at all. You start one sketch, see if it looks good, and keep going, see if it's user experience design friendly. Now we have our wireframes. So our wireframes are basically, when we put this online, we're going to put it either on an iPad, an iPhone, an Android, a computer laptop, whatever you are trying to create your platform for. This is the wireframes. You can see which button you press and where it's going to go next. Now we get to focus on some more things for creating. We need to focus on the language. We're going to think about branding, users, culture, and context in which the product is to be used. A little bit more of UI parts as well. We definitely want to use a good color scheme from the get-go. It's going to make it a lot easier throughout the process. And Adobe Cooler is a really helpful platform to utilize. Then we have the user interface mockup. We're going to create guidelines and continue using the same UI elements throughout the process. A good thing to do is make a mock-up of all your UI elements, whichever buttons you're using, which colors, just to make sure everything's staying organized. Now we have our prototype. This is where we're going to choose mock-ups and their specific parts. We're going to add layers of interaction by linking them through. So we're going to try to create clickable mock-ups using tools like InVision or technologies like HTML and CSS. HTML and CSS are really going to bring our designs full on to life for every single user. For compatibility with target devices, you have to focus on this. Do you want this to work on a computer screen? Which size computer screen? What about an iPhone versus Android, or even a smartwatch or TV? You must design for your intended use. And you can design for 2 of these, even 3 of these. That's going to be called responsive. Now we're going to finalize. We're going to define guidelines and hierarchy for typography. Generally, a good rule is 12-point font is recommended. You're really going to want to use a limited number of fonts on a page. I definitely wouldn't recommend using more than 2 or 3. And make sure they complement each other. We also need to optimize and improve the existing designs. If there are any alternatives to consider, now it's the time to do so. Let's finalize the designs and make sure that they're presentable to customers. Copywriting. We're going to optimize the wording throughout the project. For instance, it's really a good idea to never use double negatives. It doesn't really work. Using the word you throughout instructions is really going to grab the user's attention and make sure that, that we're talking to them. We're also going to want to give feedback to users inside the product. Show when something is loading, when a user needs to wait, such as when you're uploading a file. You know how a lot of times the websites will show.
Thanks for watching. Feel free to add your questions as comments down below.
At what percentage the file is uploaded. That's really helpful. Also, adding error messages if something went wrong. And give feedback of successful users' actions. The last step, we're going to pass the design to the development team. This is going to be along with documents and document specs to have everything ready to be turned into code. But a good idea is to make sure you're checking in throughout the entire design process to make sure all of your work is doable for the development team. You need to make sure if they have enough time, energy, and also if they know how to do what you're asking of them. Now is our analyzation time. So we're going to set up our KPIs. So based on our project goals, we're going to define our key performance indicators to track for the product. So we're going to see what's been working, what hasn't been working. Make sure you're making and utilizing those changes. We're also going to create an A/B testing plan. So we're going to make a short roadmap of possible improvements and changes that can be made on the product. Definitely need to continuously test a product. It's never going to be perfect. We're going to observe and learn with usability testing, A/B tests, surveys, etc. No, people, we're always going to be learning, and you never, ever, ever want to stop testing a product. We're also going to sync with the development team. We're going to talk and inform the development team about the performance indicator changes and test results and decide if any changes need to be made. You want to stay in constant communication with them. Recap. So what did we learn so far? We learned about usability test, A/B test, how to use qualitative data, learned about information architecture. There was a lot on this PowerPoint, and I'm so excited that you came with me to learn all about UX design. So for our next session, it's going to be 5 practical guides for user experience and user interface. And I do offer web design private coaching sessions. You just click on this link and, I'll help you out. Thank you so much for coming to my lesson. I hope you learned a lot, and please feel free to give me a shout out whenever you need some help. Thank you. Have a good one. Hi, I'm Grayson Daub, and I'll be your UX instructor today. We are now in Lesson 2. Please feel free to go back and check out Lesson 1 before getting started here. We'll be going over 5 practical guides for UX and UI, which are all very different, and we're going to be talking about the main differences between these two fields as they often get confused. They do tend to intertwine. As a UX designer, it doesn't always mean you'll be doing UI though, and vice versa. Before we get there, we're going to be talking about the 5 UX practical guides, being mastering the basics of visual and web design, understanding the UX design process, learn how to design user interfaces and sharpen your visual design skills, work on fake/training projects, learn UI, UX related tools. So before we jump into UX UI design, we need to master these basics of web and visual design beforehand with all these principles and skills that will be carried over in UI design, such as designing buttons, typography, white space, drop shadow, working with different color combinations, gradients, anything a little bit more visually. So having a good understanding and solid foundation in visual and web design is essential to becoming a skilled UX UI designer. We're going to be talking about the basic and key design principles that you need to become familiar with, if you haven't already. As you can see, UI is based a little bit more on visuals, while UX is based more on functionality. So a lot of these are combined. That's why a lot of people are tended to be called UX/UI designers. But as you can see here, they're very different. Like UI focuses on color, graphic design, layouts, versus UX focuses on wireframes and information architecture. So UX designers are going to be focusing on functionality. UI is going to be visuals. You will see some intertwining though. There's definitely a fair amount of overlap, such as wireframing, prototyping, usability, and accessibility. And a reason why a lot of people get these confused is because they are so similar. It's important though that we understand these differences as well as while being potentially in the job hunt. So human resources, hiring managers, recruiters often still get confused between these two different fields. It's important to let them know what UX is versus UI. Although as UX throughout time becomes more defined and more mature, more people are going to know the difference between these two fields. Now we're going to master the basics of visual web design. We're going to be discussing color, grid systems, composition and balance, typography, and contrast. So there's some pretty broad color theories. So if you click on this link here, it's going to have a huge article for color theory for designers. It's going to go in much more detail, and I highly recommend you take a look at it either after this class. So you can see how each color emits a certain feeling. For instance, blue represents depth, stability, trust. Orange, enthusiasm, success, warmth. They're all pretty different. Although if we look at red, it has some pretty opposing feelings, such as passion, empower, determination, because red can also mean love or even violence. It really also depends what area you're from, because in China, red is the color of good luck and happiness. Another example is that in Thailand, purple is the color of mourning for widows, while for us, it means more royalty and luxury. It is best to know your audience and be aware of their cultural influences, so that way you can be aware how certain colors may emit a certain feeling for them. Here we can see how colors can complement one another along with basic rules to them. There are numerous concepts to think about during color theory, so I would suggest looking at this sheet as something to always look back on when deciding on a color theme. I included a link here, so hopefully it will be a bit less blurry. But knowing your complementary colors is extremely important, and I would definitely start here for the basics. We also must remember that hue, tint, tone, and shade are different versions of the same color. For example, if you see here, we are looking at the color pink. It's a little darker, but then we're going to add a little white to it. This is how it gets a little bit lighter, so that's going to be our tint. Now we're doing tone, so that's going to be a hue plus white and black. So it's gotten a little bit more to the gray scale. Now shade is hue and black. So as you can see here, whenever you add black, all these colors are going to get drastically darker. This is going to be the one that you're going to notice the most difference in. We also have cool, warm, bright, dark, saturated, and desaturated colors as well. You can see some of these colors are placed in more than one category and color properties, such as red, which can be warm, bright, saturated, desaturated, or even dark. As we change the hue, tone, tint, and shade, these colors sometimes can transition into another color property. Now we have grid systems. These go way back in time. Think about a bookshelf or even a map. Those use grids, and so do UX designers. Now it's even more important because as more people are using numerous platforms such as computers, TVs, iPhones, we're going to need to build grids that are as versatile as possible for these reflexive platforms. Because a grid for an iPad will be vastly different than a grid for an iPhone, as the screens are completely different sizes. There's 4 main grid styles. I suggest clicking on this link here. It's going to dive into more detail. Here we're going to discuss manuscript grid, column grid, modular grid, and baseline grid. Here's an example of a manuscript grid. So a manuscript grid, or a single column grid, is the simplest grid structure. It's great for continuous blocks of text. If you look here, it is just, you can type whatever you want in there and it stays organized in one distinct location for all your texts. Now we have column grid or multi-column grid. These are great for layouts that contain discontinuous information. You can fill these in with text, images, or you could do an image with the text description down below. Now we have modular grids. So modules are aligned not just by the eye estimate, but along the invisible straight lines here. The module itself is always going to be rectangle and its borders are either visible or indicated like this by background coloring, such as white. Or it could also be another image that's behind here in the background or a frame, such as you could outline this in black or purple, whatever color you want. It provides flexible formats for pages and allows you to create a complex hierarchy. For instance, you could put font right here and put a giant hero image up here. It really depends what you want people to pay attention to when you first get onto the screen, and how you organize it is totally up to you. Now we have the baseline grid. This ensures at the bottom of each line of text, its baseline aligns with the vertical spacing. It's great for typography and laying out elements. Look at the text lineup. We measure the bounding boxes, these right here, and make sure that the words themselves are on equal parts of the page. For instance, if you see here, this is 32 away and this is also 32 away. This is making sure that this is all staying vertically in the same spot. Then we can check the text. So see how here, this is 39 away, 36, and 42. We want to make sure that it's user friendly and that it looks nice. It doesn't have to always be completely equal for this portion, but you do want to keep it in similar, in similar frames of reference. Look how much better this looks when you align it all. Now we're going to check out composition and balance. If you click here on this blue link, it's going to take you to another page and more details. For this, we're going to be looking at physical and visual balance, such as visual weight and visual direction. We're also going to be looking at 4 types of balance, being symmetrical balance, asymmetrical balance, radial balance, and mosaic balance. Lastly, we're going to be looking at 3 types of symmetry, being reflection symmetry, rotational symmetry, and translational symmetry. Here's physical and visual balance. So visual weight is perceived weight of a visual element. It's a measure of how much anything on the page attracts the eye of the viewer. Now we have visual direction. This is the perceived direction of a visual force. It's the direction in which we think an element should be moving if we're given a chance to move according to the forces acting on it. So in hindsight, an unbalanced composition can feel uncomfortable for the viewer. Look at the right image, these 2 people on a seesaw. It doesn't really look like they should be in balance, right? Because this person looks like they would weigh a lot more than this person. You would think that the smaller person would be a little bit further up in the air. It doesn't really make sense. Versus if we move the heavier person to the middle, this makes more sense to the viewer because the weight is more evenly distributed. So viewers will be more engaged with the visually aesthetically pleasing image that makes sense. So they're going to be looking at this and they're going to be more interested in it. Now we have symmetrical balance. This occurs when equal weights are on equal sides of composition. It evokes a feeling of formality and elegance, but sometimes can be seen as dry and boring. For instance, now we have the same 2 people of the same size and probably same weight on the seesaw. Then there's asymmetrical balance. It results from unequal visual weight on each side of the composition. It may contain one dominant element balanced by a few lesser focal points. These are often seen as more engaging and more modern, but can be pretty hard to attain. See how these images aren't really fully even, but they do look pretty aesthetically pleasing. For instance, this pink line looks a little bit shorter than the blue line, and this
If you have enjoyed watching this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.
This one has a car on this side. This one, we have a dog over here versus a cat, but it looks like they're balancing each other out. So it makes sense. It's hard to design like this, but it does give the viewer a nice feeling. Now we're going to look at radial balance. This occurs when elements radiate from a common center. For example, rays of sunlight and ripples in a pond after a stone is tossed, or even kaleidoscopes. Example, look at this kaleidoscope. We start in the middle, then we go out, and we see a repetitive pattern. This one, here's our focal point, and it just keeps going. It spreads and spreads and spreads, just kind of like when you're throwing a stone into a pond. Now we have mosaic balance. This kind of results from chaos, from balanced chaos. For example, let's look at Jackson Pollock's art. We don't really know exactly what's going on, and it can make you it does look pretty chaotic. There's no focal point. We don't know exactly where to look at first. But it looks clean at the same time. It's visually appeasing. Another example is here. There's no focal point. You can see that it almost looks like there might be some patterns, but they're not exactly there directly. It's still aesthetically pleasing, and it looks balanced. Now we have reflection symmetry. This occurs when everything is mirrored around a central axis, such as a snowflake or butterfly. Examples like this show that the reflection symmetry, as we often think, isn't going to be perfect on each side, and it might have slight variations. It's going to be pretty close to each other, but it's not going to be exactly the same on both sides. This is in differentiation of geometry, which often when you're doing math classes, you're going to be seeing reflection symmetry, but the shapes and sizes are often going to be exactly the same. But a good real-life example is taking a picture on a camera versus having a front-facing camera or somebody else taking a picture of you, or even looking at yourself in the mirror. You're going to see two different versions of yourself. You're going to look really similar, but not exactly the same. Rotational symmetry. This occurs when everything rotates around a common center. Some examples are wheels of a moving car or petals growing on a sunflower. Let's look at this hexagon. In order to move the yellow dot, it has to be moved 6 times to make its full round of circle. Another example is, let's look at the rotational symmetry in the R. See how the R starts here, goes here, here, and here, to get all around to be the rotationally symmetrical. Translational symmetry occurs when elements are repeated over different locations in space. An example is a repeating fence. See how the houses are repeating, but they're on different lines and in slightly different spots. What about the birds? These ones look like they're angled a little bit differently. These ones are mirroring one another. But these ones, the birds aren't angled any differently and aren't facing any other direction. They're just in different locations. Typography. This is a huge part of UX design, and knowing this information will allow you to be a better designer. So here we have some free typography lessons. If you click on this, it'll take you to another link. And these lessons are pretty important. It's going to allow you to learn about font size, line height, different styles of typefaces, and things like typeface contrast and weight. You're going to learn how to choose and combine typefaces, and you're going to learn more about rhythm and modular scale. I know this seems a little like a little too much information to take in at once, but I promise you, through practice, you'll get there. Now we have contrast. So what does contrast do? It grabs attention. It helps you organize info, and it's going to create a focus. Here we have a link that's going to give you more in detail information about what contrast is. There's some important questions to think about when you're thinking about contrast in your designs. For instance, how are you creating contrast? Is it through texture, typography, color, shape? If you want to achieve contrast through typography, which fonts are you using? Are they different or just a little bit different? Be bold with your font choices, but remember to make sure the text is legible and that it stays in the same element of design. Last one, is contrast strengthening your design idea? So here's our UX design process. This is an extremely important aspect in becoming a UX UI designer. You really need to understand the process, methods, philosophy, and everything that's used in the UX design process. Generally speaking, the UX design process is very flexible. There's no strict rules or order of phases to follow. In addition to that, various companies, teams might have different methods of implementing their own design process. They all do generally look relatively similar though. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a general idea and a common UX design process called design thinking. Here you can see we're going to empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. Empathize. The first stage of the design thinking is about getting to know the users, their wants, needs, and objectives. This includes observing and engaging with people, their experiences and motivations, as well as immersing yourself in the physical environment so you can gain a deeper understanding of the issues involved. All of the insights gathered at this stage are carried over the next stages. Here's a list of questions to ask while working on this stage. Do users need the product you're making? Do they want enough that they will either pay for it, or if it is free, spend time looking for it and learning to use it? Are you missing a key feature they'll need? Are you spending time building features they will never use? Define. This is the second stage in the design thinking process, and it's dedicated to defining the problem based on the information you've gathered during the empathize stage. During the define stage, you will analyze your observations and put them in order to define the key problems that you and your team have identified so far. Once you've created a problem statement, you can start to progress into the third stage of design thinking, ideate. So this is where we ideate. All of the insights from the previous stages have given you a very solid foundation in the terms of understanding your users. So it's time to generate potential solutions to the problem statement you've defined during the define stage. There are many different types of ideation techniques that will help you to generate potential solutions and ideas, such as brainstorming, mind mapping, and body storming. If based on previous stages we have decided what to build, we're gonna need to decide how. It is in the structure and skeleton phases where the application really takes shape. So you need to answer some critical implementation questions like, how should the content be organized so the users can easily find it? Will users find your app easy to use, or will they get confused and lost? What content is needed and how should it be written to be most engaging? The main goal of this stage is to generate as many potential solutions as possible when moving into the next design phase, and this will be prototyping. Prototyping. This is the fourth phase in the design thinking process, and it's all about experimentation and turning ideas into tangible products. A prototype is basically a scaled-down version of the product which incorporates the potential solutions identified in the previous stages. This step is key in putting each solution to the test and highlighting any constraints and flaws. Throughout the prototype stage, the proposed solutions may be accepted, improved, redesigned, or rejected, depending on how they fare in prototype form. In this stage, we need to focus on the surface of the product. What is the product going to look like visually? This is an important step because a user's first impression is critical. So try to find answers to the following questions. What should the visual tone of the product be? How do users feel when they see your product? Do they trust it? Is the product visually appealing and does it spark joy? Is the visual design usable and accessible? Last stage is testing. This is about validating the product before finally developing it. This is the final stage of the 5-stage mode. However, the results generated from the testing phase will often lead you back to a previous stage of the process, providing the insights you need to improve the current build of your product and test it over again. Design thinking is flexible in an iterative process. This means that the process doesn't have to follow the steps in a sequential order. The 5 stages should be understood as different modes that contribute to a product. Now we're going to learn how to design user interfaces and sharpen our visual design skills. We're going to get familiar with UX UI design patterns, copy top designers, and we're going to find out that details truly do matter. Having very strong visual UI design is a very valuable asset and a crucial step of becoming a UX UI designer, and probably the hardest discipline to perfect. It takes months and years of practice. You need to focus on visual UI design as the very big part of your skill set. You have to learn how to design user interfaces for different kinds of devices, including desktops, tablets, mobiles, etc. Every single day, you need to work, perfect, and sharpen your design skills. How are you going to do that? I pointed down below a few ideas and methods that you can use. First, this is how we're going to get familiar with UX UI patterns. Generally speaking, a UX UI design patterns are recurring solutions that solve common design problems you might encounter every day working as a UX UI designer. Design patterns are also known as standard reference points, guides, templates that designers might use to solve a particular problem when designing a website or mobile application. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single time you try to solve a particular design problem. Here's a list of some of the best places to find design patterns on the web. Take a click on any of these links and it'll take you to another page. Another thing we can do is copy top designers. There's nothing better than learning from the best and more experienced designers. Not everyone has a mentor or someone to help them in learning UX UI design. So I'd like to share with you a very effective method that will help you improve your visual skills on your own. How can you start? Go to Dribbble, Behance, Pinterest, or any other website where you might find good designs, and start copying top designers, but not blindly. Study them and be careful with close attention to detail. See what they do. See if you can mimic it, and see if you can make another version for yourself. This is where you're going to focus on layout, navigation, typography, icons, background, and so much more. You're going to try to understand how all of those small details are coming together. Copying and recreating others will give you that good taste. So you're going to have a better understanding and idea what good design looks like. But remember, this is all about practice. You're not actually selling any of this stuff. Details really, truly do matter, especially when it comes to UX UI design. Sometimes even really small and subtle change might make a huge difference. So you need to start paying attention to every single detail of your designs. You need to be able to differentiate good from bad design. You also need to train your eye every single day. Go to Dribbble, Behance, and study very carefully top designers. How they use white space, typography, spacing, color combinations. Practice makes perfect. Now we're going to work on training projects. In order to improve your visual/UI design skills, you should start working on the fake concept projects. This is a great practice method which will help you build your portfolio, and it's going to help you get new clients or land a full-time job. In addition to that, working on fake projects is also great fun, as you get total freedom to play around with different design ideas, layouts, colors, typography, etc. So enjoy the learning process and have a great time doing it. Good visual UI design will draw attention to the people that you may eventually want to work with. Here are some great UX UI related tools. We have Sketch, which is great if you're a Mac user. If you have Windows, Adobe XD is pretty flexible on all platforms. You can also use Framer, Figma, UXPen, and Envision app. These are all great tools, and I'd go ahead and check.
Thanks for watching. Please like and share this video.
Follow these out if you can. So what have we learned in tonight's lesson? We learned about different types of grids, UX versus UI, color theory, balance, symmetry, and found out about numerous resources for becoming the best designer you can be. Our next session is going to be about website user experience checklist. Once again, here's a reminder, if you ever want private coaching, please reach out to me and I'll help you out. Just click on this link if so. Thank you so much for listening to my lecture. Once again, my name is Grayson Daub, and I hope you learned something new. Hi, I'm Grayson Daub, and I will be your teacher today for UX design, lesson 3. So today we're going to be going over a user experience checklist. So right now we're going to be analyzing the website called Mural, and we're going to be looking at their homepage. We're going to see if we can find the company location and contact information to see if they're clearly accessible. Let's see, so we're scrolling down here. Just show you a little bit about what's on this website beforehand. So it looks really pretty, which is awesome. Now, what I would think to do is probably go to resources, maybe? Okay, here we go. Here's the About Us section. I naturally probably wouldn't go directly to resources. I was either going to do that or scroll to the bottom of the page, but looks like we're finding this. Okay, so here we can see the team. These are people we can get in touch with. Okay, now we have the location. So looks like it's pretty big. We've got it all over the world, and this is a really cool map, in my opinion. Now, one thing to notice at the top is here's our navigation bar. So our navigation bar is always gonna be, it can be on the top, it can also be on the side. It's just a good way so we can this is where our information architecture is gonna be very important. So as you can see, this one has a drop-down menu and it's gonna have hidden things underneath. Now we're gonna check out to see if they have any links to social networks. I'd imagine this would probably be under the About section as well. So we're going to scroll down. Okay, it's not looking like they are linked to any social media accounts on here. That is totally fine. Normally, if they did, though, it would be kind of towards the bottom hand side. And now we're going to see if there's a quick call to action, which is going to tell visitors what to do next. For Mural, it doesn't really look like there's a direct call to action. It looks like it's something that you'd kind of explore the website beforehand, which is totally fine. Because you can hire it looks like you can hire an expert here if we click this button. So things like that. Okay, here we go. So here's some call to actions that we have. They see that we're on a new page. We can figure out if we need help on a project, if we want to learn a new skill, if we want to know what Playmakers is. So this is really helpful for users. I didn't have to do any work to find this. They figured these are common things I'd be looking for when I click on this page. So that's awesome. Now, when I look at the site, when I first logged on, the purpose did look relatively quick. It looked like there's like some, you can see here there's sticky notes. You can see here that there's a bunch of people. So it's kind of looking like you're all collaborating and putting these sticky notes in place. And it does look like it creates a positive first impression that's appropriate for a business, because it looks very professional. It looks clean. Looks like they've won some awards. They have a lot of advanced features. This looks like it could be something very useful for business. I know for myself, I have used this through other work. And the images and videos look like they're definitely very relevant and totally make sense. All the user interface design on here looks absolutely beautiful. So one thing is the video, see here, it looks like you have to scroll over with your mouse, which is totally fine. There's no sound, which I think is great. I don't think this is a type of website that really needs to have sound. I think that'd be very distracting to users. Now, I'm sure they have a very large team, so they probably wouldn't have to do this. There are no major changes to the site or any delivery policies that are clearly announced. Sometimes if somebody's working on a website, they might have a page come up that says like, hey, we're still working on this. It'll be fixed in about 3 weeks, something like that. Just give users a heads up. But, since this is a pretty big place, I'm sure they have a large team. They don't really have to worry about that. And it does have a fair amount of pages, it looks like. Navigation makes sense. Doesn't look like it's overly formatted, and it won't be mistaken as adverts. Yeah, the home page definitely looks like the home page. I don't think that's very confusing for this one. And yeah, once again, we know we have the About Us. I think it'd be really cool if they had the About Us, like maybe on another section of this, but maybe their research showed otherwise. Definitely found it though within a few seconds. So that's not too bad. Okay, now we're going to be looking at layout and design. So we're going to be checking out the design, layout, and organization of the site to make sure it's consistent and appropriate. From what I've seen right now, it looks like they've utilized a lot of similar elements. It's looking pretty good, in my opinion. We're also going to check to see if the most important information is above the fold. So the fold is the part of the page visible without scrolling. So it'd be like right up here. And I'd say so. Having this navigation bar up top consistently on each page will definitely help make sure that the fold stays consistent. We have our logo, so we know that's important, and we have our navigation bar, which is going to lead us to every part of the page that we need to go to. Now we're going to see if the site is responsive and easy to use on different devices without horizontal scrolling. One way we can do this is also just, this is a good sign it's responsive. It moves with you, which is super awesome. I would love to show you, what I would suggest here is pulling out your phone and looking at Mural on there, see if that works. Now we're going to see if the related information is clearly grouped together. Here's an example of a sidebar. It's pretty awesome. This looks pretty all put together. So engineering's related to design, and design's related to the product. So it looks like on this part, they definitely did a really great job making sure all the information's grouped together in a good way, especially with these drop-down menus. It's all looking pretty good. The pages also aren't cluttered and have enough white space to make them clear and easy to read. I don't really see any issues with these pages. They're spaced out pretty evenly. Definitely no complaints here from what I'm seeing. Pop-up windows are kept to a minimum. I actually have yet to see one pop-up menu, so that's pretty great. But it's totally fine to use pop-up windows if you really need to. Those are really awesome, especially for, if you're in healthcare or if you're typing in a new password or have to type in any important information. A pop-up window is fantastic to make sure that, you typed everything in. And that's a great error message possibility. Does the layout focus users' attention on what to do next? I'd say so. For here, we know that they want to make mural work for you. So we're looking at some case studies. We can look at product development, agile management, remote collaboration. So those are organized really well. We know if we're looking to find out case studies on remote collaboration, we can click on any of these two examples. So let's say we want to look at IBM's. Here we go. Pretty simple, to the point. Definitely this is a fantastic case study. Very simple. It's detailed, but it's not too lengthy, so that looks pretty great to me. Now, are there attention-grabbing features such as animations? Yeah, here we go. We have like a video locked in. I did see some icons that would kind of like bounce around earlier. So if we go back to features, like this moves a little bit, which is awesome. And it doesn't move like too aggressively, so it's not gonna be too bad. This, you can see these move around a little bit once you scroll and once you put your mouse on them. And yeah, it is pretty clear which elements are clickable. Like these, they don't really look like they're clickable. This doesn't really either, but this looks like it's clickable. It's outlined in red, has an arrow. These ones just look like short animations. For scrolling, it's pretty good. So pages don't have, as you can see here, if we look at this, that's great. It shows you that the page scrolls down until the very end. So it's not really stopping you at any point until the page is fully ended. Now for color, it does look like they've done a great job making sure that color is used to group and structure items on the page. You can see here, like, blue tends to be the background. Pink tends to be graphs. And important concepts, here we are here. So it looks like in the background they've done more light colors. Yellow seems to like icons, notifications. The background is pretty simple, definitely not complicated at all. You can just see it's white, very simple. The logo is in the same spot on every page. So here we have mural, that doesn't move. It stays, that's what we call static. It just stays the same. It's going to flow through on every single page you go to, except when it's loading. But yeah, here we go. Same page. We'll look at one more. Same page. It still stays in the same spot, which is awesome. Now we're going to be exploring accessibility of Mural. So we're going to see if the text on each page is easy to read. A lot of times pages, if they use a bad color, like let's say they use like a lime green here or dark purple, that might be a little bit harder to read than it is right now. So black with a white background is always a great way to go. But there are other alternatives if need be, or if you want to get extra creative. And are the attributes provided for non-text elements such as images. I think this is great. People know this logo Slack. If they're having a hard time reading this, they can see that logo. Same with Typeform, same with Zapier, Zoom. They definitely have been very great about adding as many pictures as I think that they possibly could on this website. Yep, here we go. Here's some more visuals.
Thanks for watching. Feel free to add your questions as comments down below.
Did great with that. And also, like, this is not on full screen, just due to the space of recording this video. I know if I were to make this screen bigger, these pictures would therefore get bigger. But, you know, here's what we have so far. I would say these pictures are pretty good sizes. So can the site be navigated without a mouse, just using the keyboard? I mean, right now I'm moving just with the keyboard. I don't know if I've actually seen that many sites that you can rely only on the keyboard. This one, it definitely looks like you need to use this mouse. Looks like it's a pretty imperative feature, but I mean, that is extremely challenging to do that with only doing a keyboard. You know, a lot of websites really are pretty behind in accessibility. You know, we're getting better. I hope as a UX designer that I also stay on track for accessibility. That's something I'm always working on myself. Now we're going to see if pages don't use color to convey information. I mean, here we go. This is 495% return on investment. That stands out to me. Less than 6 months paycheck. You know, that can really help people that struggle with like dyslexia, or have poor eyesight, or maybe have ADHD and are just scrolling and they just missed it. They definitely won't miss that here. It makes the important features that an average user will be looking for. It makes them stand out. Now, is the language simple and clear and appropriate for the audience? I mean, for here, this definitely looks pretty complicated to me, but this is also about return on investment. So I do feel as though if somebody were to be looking at this page, they're going to understand this type of language. Versus, you know, if we go back to product, we're going to look at features. This is meant to be something for everybody to look at because, you know, there's people of all ages using this platform. Because if teachers can use it, they can use it very well in the education system. I'd say now it's getting very simple, easily built diagrams to map out complex workflows, drag and drop visuals. It seems pretty direct, to the point. You know, nothing that I've seen so far that looks overly complicated besides that portion on return on investment. But I don't think there's anything that they could have really done besides make a whole segment on what is return on investment within a corporation. Now, is the page content readable without a style sheet? Yeah, I'd say so. One thing that we can do is also use a web accessibility checker. So I actually have one downloaded here. It's called a UX check. Here we can look at basic rules. Man, there's another platform called a web accessibility checker that you can look up online. I'm just going to remind you of everything that we can focus on the pages. Yeah. Okay, and now we'll be looking at navigation. So the navigation is pretty clear and consistent on every page. You know, you always know where to go. You know, the navigation bar will be always be up top. So now that we know that, I feel like it makes the process pretty simple. We also know that the navigation bar is static, so definitely don't see any problems with this. It is pretty clear why people are on this site. You can definitely see it's a collaboration tool. Sticky notes are huge. Looks like you can also work from anywhere, which is pretty cool. So it looks like it's a great place to bring people together and share ideas when they physically can't be together. And yeah, so And there are some pretty clear links to the main pages. Like we click this, it'll take us to the home page, go over the basics. We type in pricing. We go to pricing. That's clearly going to take us to the cost of it all. There's probably different feature plans. So here we are. We can do $12, $20, do a free trial, contact us. All looks pretty simple. Content is organized into categories logically. Pricing, this is exactly what I would expect. I think it's pretty cool too. It goes into more detail. Do you want this to be for nonprofits, for educators, consultants? I think it's really neat because it allows you to get some more information on which plan you should choose. And they have some plans that are more geared towards certain types of people, which is awesome. They really nailed that one down. Resources, I think this is pretty good, especially like the suddenly remote option that I think a lot of people will be clicking that button pretty obviously. So this is good. It shows you how you can do a little bit more of collaborative work online. We're going to accept all the cookies. The one thing though that is kind of an issue on this page is we lost that navigation bar. So that's interesting. It looks like here it went to a completely different separate page, but due to the fact that we lost that navigation bar, we have to go back, which it's not really showing on this screen, but I have the mural tab popped up. So we have to go back and click that. But, not every single user is going to think like that. They might be searching around the screen looking for an exit button or back button. So that is definitely an issue from my viewpoint for that. For products, I would say this is pretty good. Like they have an integration section, Microsoft Teams. So, you click here, that's where you're going to learn more. You click here, this is where you're going to learn more about them. Use cases, we looked at that a little bit earlier. That looked well organized. You know exactly what you're going to be looking at. You're going to do case studies for design here, case studies for engineering here, case studies for products here. All very helpful, and it, pretty intuitive from there on. Now, is there an obvious change for when the user hovers over the mouse over something that might be clickable? Here, like these move. Normally, if something were to be clickable, you'd, I don't know, it'd kind of have like a pink thing. It would look like a pink or red tint, or maybe have an arrow. Those are good signs that something is clickable. There is a good sitemap. Here you can see like what the website will look like once you fully log on and once you get this working, so you can see what this is all about. The information architecture, I think, makes this have a good sitemap on every page. And I'd say there is a pretty easy and obvious way to move between related sites and pages. All pretty intuitive. Like, we're looking for consultants. I'm like, okay, so that's awesome. Maybe I want to be a consultant. This is clearly where I apply. It's awesome. It takes me right there once I click on that button. I knew to click on that button also because, when you hover over it, the button gets a little darker. It also gets a little drop shadow behind it. So it looks a little different when you hover over it. So you're going to notice that, hey, that's a button that you clearly click on. Does navigation use trigger words that users look for when they can scan the site? I would say so. Free workspace, opportunity, discounted membership, VIP pricing, private Slack. These are all things that probably would stand out to users. Now we can look at industries. We'll see what stands out with wording on here. Define priorities. uncovering patterns in data, financial services. These all look like extremely important and relevant things that people would want to know in financial services. Technology, if you're working in tech, you're definitely going to want to know how to plan a roadmap and evaluate the processes. So this definitely looks like the wording is pretty phenomenal on that, and it stands out. One good thing to notice here is I have yet to see anything that has like a double negative. Those are always bad to use. It looks like they've used positive words. They've never said anything like, hey, don't do this. You definitely want to make sure that everything is clear, concise, and be like, hey, this is what you need to do. And they've done a great job showcasing that. All right, now we're going to be looking at links. And one way we can do this to make sure there aren't any broken links, can actually check out the broken link checker tool, which I've never just learned about today. So what we do here is from the home page, we put in the website URL. Gotta type in, this funky information. It's checking, seeing if anything's wrong. It's looking good. Might take a bit. While it's scanning, because it does look like it's going to take a while, it just checks to make sure it's all good. Might be easier if I check single web page. Yeah, we'll come back to that. Also, are there important commands such as the word buy are displayed as buttons, not links? I would say so. Now that we have the pricing right here, it takes us on the same platforms, not taking us to a third party. Usually, if it's presented as a link, that would presumably take us to a third party platform, which ends up being more work for the user. So it's definitely more user friendly if we have it directly have the capability buy on that website we're utilizing. Are the links descriptive rather than saying click here? I mean, yeah. Like this doesn't say click here. It says buy plus, contact us, start free trial. So you know exactly what's going to happen when you click these buttons. Here, you're not paying a penny. Here, you're going to got to put that credit card information in there. So they did a good job on that. Are links placed in moving features? I would say no, which is pretty good. You definitely don't want your link to be bouncing around the screen. You want it to stay static, keep it in the same spot, because you definitely don't want that one to scooch around on the screen. And for those, links are pretty, pretty formal, so they definitely shouldn't be bounced around anywhere. They're a very legitimate thing that you want to make them look professional. Do the links look the same across the site? Easily recognizable? I would say so. They all tend to be a white box outlined in pink with pink wording. The font's all the same. They all have that drop shadow when you scroll or when you place your mouse on top. Here, we'll check out some ones over here as well. Okay, that one doesn't have any, but we can check out use cases. There we go. So these ones have a few buttons, but it's not really just like one certain part that you press. You can press anywhere on the screen, it'll take you there. But they do all, as you can see, have the white with the pink outline and in the same font, which is awesome. Okay, we're going to go back to pricing. Do these change color once you click on them? Yeah, it lets you know that your mouse is at least hovering over it. There's a little differentiation between the colors. All right, now we'll be going over forms. The first thing we're going to look at are only necessary questions asked. So far, I have not seen any questions that have been asked. I'd imagine that questions would.
If you have enjoyed watching this video, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you.
Probably only pop up if we're actually making an account. Because, I mean, right now, there's nothing that they really need to know about us. But there is one question on here. Suddenly remote? Question mark. That's to the point. It's something that everybody's going through. So this is awesome. That's a great question to ask people how they can utilize this platform during this crazy time period. Now we're going to go back here. Unfortunately, as you see, that navigation bar that I was talking about earlier disappeared, which definitely seems to be a pretty big user error. It looks like you could click this button, the home page, but what if you didn't want to go to the home page? What if you wanted to go to resources? I think it would have been helpful to keep that navigation bar up top, just to make it one less click for somebody that might have wanted to go to hire an expert or maybe wanted to go to use cases. But here we are. So now the next one is, do forms allow users to input information instead of having long drop down menus? Yeah, I'd say like these menus definitely pretty short to the point. Like there's only 2 that actually have drop down menus, so it kind of seems like you get everything you need right here. It's a very simple platform. But sometimes you do have to put in some forms. So forms allow you to input information. Like this would be considered a form. So here, like a submission form would typically have name, first name, last name, email, sometimes your address. It could eventually ask for credit card information, but that's later on. So I type that in. My name's Grayson. We'll say my last name is Smith. And one thing we can check here is for error messages. So I'm going to try to type in an email that hopefully does not exist. Oh gosh, I really hope. So I'm going to do 12h at, I'm going to make up a fake email domain. Let's say at UX. Perfect. So you see here, there's an error message. Must be an email. There's no .com. That email does not exist. They did a great job just directly letting me know that. That's a phenomenal error message. Sometimes as well, like let's say you are inputting information for money, or making an online payment or something like that. Do the forms already include a money sign, a percentage sign, or does the user have to type it in themselves? I truthfully don't see this website being something where you ever need to do that. But maybe when you're typing in, your payments, that could be a thing, but I definitely don't want to make an account tonight. It is a great platform, but, All right, now our do text boxes provide plenty of space for the answer? I'd say so. I definitely don't know many people with super long first name, longer than this. We'll see how long it goes. So here, we're gonna see how long that space bar let me go on. Okay, so it does stop here, so they do have some boundaries, but the likelihood of somebody having a name longer than this is probably pretty low. Are users pre-warned if external information is required? Example, passport number. That's a great question. I'd imagine the way to tell that would be, I'd probably have to sign in, start that free trial. And hopefully if I did get that free trial and it's been 30 days, that's more likely when credit card information would be needed. And hopefully they'd let me know that I do need to have a credit or debit card beforehand. Yeah. Now, do the fields contain hints or examples to make the expected input clear? Yeah, I'd say so. Like this one lets you know, hey, put in your work email. Awesome. You sign right in. Simple as that. For formatting, do they let you know what format it should be in? Yeah. This one, there is a format for your email. You have to put in that @ sign right there instead of typing in, the letters AT, which somebody could think that maybe. Um, so yeah, that's pretty helpful. All right, it's Grayson again, and now we're going to be looking at content. So we're going to go back to the home page, which, okay. Perfect, there we go. Looks like we had to press the back button. We're going to see if the content is easily scannable with short paragraphs, subheadings, lists, and images. I would say so. Short paragraph. This is easily scannable. You can kind of browse through with your eyes and get the basic idea of everything. I think they did a fantastic job on that. Is there adequate contrast between the text and background color? I would say so. They kept the background white, which is awesome. They kept the font always black. Occasionally, they might have done like a pinkish tint right here, but it still stands out pretty well against this background. And as you notice here, like this is more white. This is a little bit more of like an off-white, almost gray-like. So, they definitely focused on contrast. Did awesome on it. Is all the page content useful, concise, relevant, up to date? Absolutely. So here you can see financial services, like they need to map customer needs, and they definitely need to uncover patterns in data. For anybody working in the technology part, they definitely need to evaluate the processes. Every process is different for each type of technology. Consulting, you do have to avoid scheduling delays. You also definitely need to maintain a digital record. They really looked at the target audience right here and made sure that they were all relevant to each section. Are the words / phrases and concepts familiar to the typical user? Absolutely. I think we all know the words facilitation, scheduling, digital record. I have yet to see something in here that, really throws me off and I don't know what it means. We can check out, haven't checked out the webinar section. Let's see if there's any crazy words in here. Just looking at this, it looks like it's all very simple language, easy to understand. It sounds professional, but an average user is going to know what these words mean. Do all the product pages have all the details necessary to make an informed purchase? I thought they did a great job of organizing these. As you can see, each section is split with the starter section, the plus with the enterprise network. And here you can see the key features. And if you click on these down arrows, you can get a little bit more information, which I think is awesome. They made sure that you know what they mean when they say facilitation superpowers. What does that mean? It means we're going to run remote meetings with voting, timer, follow, frameworks, and more. That's great. So it allows you to get some more in-depth email if you're really looking for it. Are there acronyms and abbreviations written in full when first used? Personally, I think the only time I saw them use an acronym might have been for consulting, I believe. Actually, it was not that. It was, let's see, hiring an expert. Okay, I guess actually I must have messed up on that. I have not seen any shorthand things on here, but there's nothing too complicated on this website that I think would need to be written shorthand or anything like that. Are the subheadings short, clear, and descriptive? Yeah, absolutely. Here we go. What do you want to do on this page? Want to improve your workflow by connecting the apps you love. Awesome. Here are the apps we can use: GitHub, Slack, Google Calendar. What about when we click on industries? Here we go. We know that these industries are proven success at scale. Here's the community of successful teams across industry-leading organizations. That's awesome. These are the people that are using Mural and have seen success. Now, is there creative or blog content that's unique and will appeal to the site's audience? Now that I actually did not really look on for here, but it does look like there's a blog section, which I was a little bit more surprised about, but there's actually a fair amount of blogs on here. There's webinars, there's visual thinking, there's remote work, facilitation, digital collaboration, design thinking. There's a lot of blogs on here that can give you amazing, insightful information. So let's click on the art of facilitation, how to make meetings better for everybody. Awesome. It's going to give you some in-depth information. How can you learn from facilitators and add this pro-level skill to your leadership toolbelt? Here we go. We got all of our information. So I'd say overall, there was like only one small error I truly saw just on this shorthand user experience checklist. But truthfully, the only way, the best way to check usability as well is to do a usability test. This is a great way just to double check your information before you do a usability test and while you're in the design phase. So yeah, it's important to use the usability test. There's outside applications that can help you stay on track, and it's a great way to make sure you're not making any mistakes ahead of time. And yeah, that's all I have for lesson 3. I hope you have a good one. And of course, once again, feel free to reach me for outside lesson hours. I'm always happy to help you.